the state capitol in Jefferson City. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined this week by a freshman senator who has been right in the middle of everything thus far in session, the Iron Lady of Jefferson County, Mary Elizabeth Coleman. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice to finally call you senator and not have to elect or rep or that stuff. How are you enjoying your time in the Senate so far?
Oh, I love the Senate. So one of the greatest parts about being in the Senate is there's so few of us, so we get to be in the middle of any policy discussion that we're interested in, and that's where I've always liked to be, so I'm pretty happy over here.
Governor, 34 senators, and a speaker, right?
That's right.
Let's jump in. The House, your old colleagues, sent over a bill, open enrollment, where I guess any public school that you want to go to, that you can get into, you can go get into it, right?
That's right. So it's something that Brad Pollitt's been working on, Representative, for I think 3 or 4 years now. It's a very modest proposal that if there's a district that would better suit a student's needs, then they can transfer into it as long as that school district opts into it. It gives parents a little bit more choice, and it helps people pick the environment that's better for their kid. We've got a lot of wonderful public schools, and letting parents pick between them, I think, is common sense.
So, bill comes over to the Senate.
Yep.
I assume that some senators have some ideas for this House bill.
Yep.
What happens to it?
I think it gets a little bit better. So I think we're going to give parents a little bit more control. We're going to let them have some more options. I think if a school district wants to opt out, they're going to have an ability to maybe opt into the ESA program or some other ideas. And after that point, we'll send it back over to the House and see what Brad's able to get done.
So you get a guy, let's say, I'm not sure how you voted, Barry Hovis.
Yeah.
He has the Jackson Indians, one of the best school districts in the state, in his district.
Yeah.
How do you convince him to do more than Brad Pollitt's bill did?
Well, I think that what you're going to see is that there's a lot of priorities that are moving in the chambers. And when the Senate sends back something that they really want, the House almost always does what the Senate wants.
Sure.
And so I think that maybe Representative Hovis has some other bills that he'd like to see move forward. And so I bet we'll get to those when some of the Senate priorities get passed in the House.
Let's talk about a priority I've heard both chambers talk about,
Yep.
crime in the city of St. Louis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things, I remember when state control, there was crime in the city of St. Louis. Without state control, frankly, there's more. There's some bills moving through the state Senate, through the House for sure, that wanted to return the police department's control back to the state. But I think the most important people that are for this are the actual cops want to be ran by the state.
Yeah, so the FOP is really pushing for this bill. They are fed up with the people locally not having their backs, and they know that the Republican supermajority in Jefferson City is never going to defund the police. We're never going to make sure their resources are taken away. We're going to make sure we've got their back. I don't know if the proposal that came out of the House is going to be able to be the solution. There's a lot of problems in the city of St. Louis. That's a significant one, but I think you're going to see a whole package put together about what do we do to make sure that the city of St. Louis is represented, but that we get some results, because that crime is affecting not just the city of St. Louis, which is really horrific, and the victims there aren't getting representation, but it's also hurting places like Jefferson County, the Merrimack border. People used to not come and do violent crime. They would come right up to the edge of the Merrimack and not come into Jefferson County. That's not the case anymore. We have roving groups of people who are coming and not just breaking into cars, but breaking into homes. And even in St. Charles, there was a woman shot at a grocery store last week. So the problems are escalating when you have people who are not responding to crime. So I think we're going to see a package of solutions to try to get people some support for the whole region.
It was interesting to me, I saw the Ethical Society of Police,
Yep.
which is a police union primarily of African-American police officers. Mm-hmm. They also came out in support of this.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but that kind of surprised me.
Well, I think people want to make this a race issue. Whenever the Jefferson County or city wants to get involved in St. Louis city politics, the race card is always shouted loudly. But the truth is that this is hurting all of our communities. This is hurting all of our police officers, and we've got to find a solution to get victims protected and cops supported.
I noticed you talked about a package of things. I mean, to me, when this bill came up, I immediately thought of Senator May.
Yep.
A colleague of yours, highly respected, someone that is a very effective senator. It would seem to me this would be very hard for her to allow to come to a vote. Is that what the package of things are for?
Well, listen, I think that sometimes people want to just say, we're going to take back control of the police, and then that's going to solve all the problems. But I think you and I would recognize that Kim Gardner's office is a lot of that problem. The cops in the city of St. Louis have been doing a great job, and the problem is nobody's had their back. And they see this as a way to get some support, and I understand that. But we really need to address some of the broader problems, which is you've got people with ankle bracelets waving guns at a memorial service. You've got victims who are not getting rape kits followed through with. There's all of these problems in that prosecutor's office, and as long as we don't have any support there, the cops don't have their support. And so I think we're going to see something move on getting some of that jurisdiction taken away from Kim Gardner, whether that's a recall provision, whether that's combining circuits with West Bell and taking over that, whether that is a special prosecutor. There's a lot of different ways that we can kind of address that.
You know, to me, Kim Gardner's office, there's been some issues, right?
Yeah. The understatement of the day.
Well, there was some local control issues where you came in and they wanted the state to be able to come take jurisdiction. A lot of prosecutors, I believe the Jefferson County prosecutor included, did not want to go down the road of concurrent jurisdiction. You're an attorney. What do you do?
Well, okay, so here's part of the problem, right? You've got other jurisdictions offering Kim Gardner's office help. You've got the Jackson County prosecutor, not a Republican prosecutor, saying,
And a very respected prosecutor.
if you don't have enough lawyers, which is that's the problem. Instead of 80 lawyers, she has 20 lawyers because she's a bad manager and she's running people off. There's one prosecutor there who has 80 murder cases. It would take her a year and a half to work through those cases if that was all she was working on, but she also has a whole portfolio of violent crime cases. But when Kim Gardner's office says no to Jackson County, says no to Jefferson County, says no to St. Charles County, sending lawyers to help, well, at some point we're going to have to do something that takes that decision away from her.
Judge Torbensky's been appointed to see the case where the Attorney General has stepped in. Andrew Bailey is trying to remove her himself. You're a St. Louis attorney. I'm sure you know of Judge Torbensky. What do you think?
So I'm not a St. Louis attorney. I am an attorney.
Correct. My fault.
But, I don't know him personally, but by reputation, an incredibly thoughtful judge, somebody who's honest and has a wonderful, stellar reputation. And I think the facts are going to, they're going to come to light, and he's going to call the balls and strikes the way he sees them. And what we're going to see is Kim Gardner has not done her job. Now, a quo warranto, which is the procedure motion to remove Kim Gardner, it takes a while. It takes a long time. It's not a silver bullet. And I think we're going to see the legislature step in maybe even before that case.
It probably shouldn't be. I mean, the fact is Kim Gardner was elected overwhelmingly twice.
That's right.
Should be hard to remove somebody, right?
It should be. I think that when the mayor of St. Louis, Tashara Jones, pulled her support from her, that was a seismic change. And you saw immediately afterwards Andrew Bailey filed that quo warranto procedure. And so I would guess if we passed a recall, that's going to probably not have that support immediately.
So an issue that you've worked on right up to the end of the first half of session is some issues with transgender students, transgender and young people. There's been some horrific allegations made about some of the medical treatment that kids have been receiving in St. Louis. I do know you, though. You're a pretty empathetic person. Mm-hmm. How do you thread the needle here and pass something that protects kids, but also, I've watched you. I know there's a part of you that probably your heart goes out to a young person who's obviously in a tough situation.
So what we have is people who are really hurting, and nobody denies that. A child who feels that they were born into the wrong body is hurting. And there are two lines of thinking about how you help that person. One has been tried, and we've seen some really barbaric practices attached to trying to get that child some help with some disastrous consequences. And some other people are saying, maybe that's not working, and we need to make sure we're protecting kids from being experimented on in this way. We are going to continue to work on that, moving that issue forward. I think we need to be banning surgeries for minors. We don't let children make healthcare decisions. We don't allow children under 17 to tan in the state, so probably letting them change their sex is not something or attempt to change their sex is not something we should sign on to. And the reason why is because it's hurting kids who are already hurting a lot worse. And so that's a caucus priority in the Senate. I would assume it's a caucus priority in the House as well. So we're going to get to that this year.
Feels like session started off with the focus on athletes, right, in high school. It's expanded. But I think if we were sitting in the Crystal Tavern, you wouldn't find anybody in the whole place that thought that you should be able to be a biological boy, be born a boy, and play on the girls' team. That seems like something that really the body seems to be moving towards some consensus on.
So I think we all agree on that, and we're going to see something passed on protecting girls' sports, but I also do think we're going to see something as well passed on protecting kids from these medical experiments that aren't working.
It felt like the athlete issue seemed like it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Then the issue languished a little bit. Then there was a news story, put some life into it. It sort of feels like both parties have spent umpteen hours on this.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like here at the halfway point, you're leading towards some sort of agreement before the end of session on it.
Yeah, again, I think everybody recognizes that we want to make sure that we're protecting kids. And when you see kids who are hurting, you want to do everything you can that we're wrapping around their parents and the kids for support. How we do that and what that looks like might kind of vary a little bit based on your opinion on this issue, but nobody in Jefferson County is going to support the kinds of allegations that are coming out of that news story.
So before you go, you came in with a large group of freshman senators.
Yeah.
It is a very different chamber. The mood, the karma, whatever you want to call it, the results, it's a very different place. Tell me about how that freshman class has kind of stepped into the role of, all right, grow up a little bit.
Well, listen, we have a more conservative state senate than we've had in a long time, and we're working together to move forward solutions for the state that are going to help people. We've made sure that parents know what their kids are being taught. We're hoping the House is going to pass that. We've passed a number of great reforms to lower taxes on food, to lower taxes on diapers and groceries. We're moving the ball forward on a number of issues, and I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to do that. The freshmen that are coming over, by and large, serve together in the House. We like each other, we trust each other, and we're focused on getting good policy for the people of Missouri, and so I think that's yielding dividends. I
watched a piece of public policy that's moving, I guess, still. You and Senator Gannon, the senators from Jefferson County, put together, I bet you most people didn't even know this. Explain the bill you did, because I had no idea that was even the case. I think most people didn't.
Well, okay, so we have two separate bills, but her bill that we're talking about, Senator Gannon's been working on for a couple of years. Right now we have a population when women give birth and who are on Medicaid, they're able to stay on it for 60 days. We know, unfortunately, Missouri has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the country. I think we're ranked 42nd. And one of the ways that we can help prevent that is by keeping women on health insurance for a longer period of time. Republicans support limited government, and we support our safety net programs going to the most vulnerable for a set period of time. And this checks both of those boxes. It's going to make a real difference in the lives of moms and babies. And so we're excited to see that continue to move forward. Although I will say, I think it's Senator Gannon and then Senator Tracy McCreary, who's also a freshman senator, who have been taking the lead on that issue.
We hope when you're coming down the hall for that bill signing, you'll stop and talk with us on This Week in Missouri Politics about it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel. Representative Keri Ingle joins us, and for the first time, David Casteel joins us after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. I want to tell you about a new thing we're offering. It's the Missouri Times Podcast Network. You'll get this show every week. If you want to listen to it in your car, you don't have time to watch it. You'll get our Show in Missouri podcast, History of Missouri, one county at a time. You'll also get our midweek update. Once a week, I throw up the Facebook Live. We talk politics, usually eat a lunch and discuss politics. You'll get to hear all those things come right to your phone. Subscribe to us on iTunes or Android. Missouri Times Podcast Network. Please join us and subscribe.
All throughout Missouri, businesses are struggling to find workers. Childcare challenges are a big reason why. Our kids are losing out too. Through high-impact early childhood investments, we can support the workforce of today and better prepare our workforce of tomorrow. Empower families with the resources they need to succeed. Reduce crime and avoid costly interventions, saving taxpayers money. Together, we can make Missouri the best place to work, raise a family, and be a kid.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. Opinion Maker panel time. We are joined by Keri Ingle. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Springfield's own Betsy Fogle. Welcome back.
Thanks.
For the first time, David Casteel from Jeffco, right?
Thank you for having me, that's right.
And Marc Ellinger, welcome back to the show. We got to stop for a second, though. You're wrapping up a 20-year career in radio.
That's right. 20 years ago, last week, I went on the radio here in Jefferson City on a local talk radio program to oppose, as a guest, to oppose annexation of Jefferson City into the rural area. One of the initial hosts said they had no interest in ever being on the show, and they looked at me and said, "Why don't you do it?"
You're hired.
20 years later, I'm the only surviving one left, and I figured 20 years is a pretty good time to say adios, and I'm going to hit the road, and I'll no longer be on Sunday mornings.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
quite
you.
a career.
Thank you very much.
Keri Ingle, you passed well, you didn't personally pass, but a bill was passed on open enrollment. What does that mean?
So the open enrollment bill basically allows kids from different school districts, for parents to opt into sending their kids to other school districts, allows them to apply. It puts a lot more bureaucratic rules and regulations in as well. And so it's really going to be more beneficial for parents who know how to navigate that system. And we're worried about how that's going to affect more rural school districts.
So, Betsy, if you got in your area, you have Springfield, a very large district.
Largest in the state.
Pretty successful district.
Yeah.
But you look around at Stafford, Nixa, different schools around that area, it feels to me like it won't be Springfield that grows. It'll probably be like Stafford that grows.
We'll see. You know, I echo Representative Ingle's concerns. I'm more concerned about rural districts than I am my own in Springfield. So when I hit the no button yesterday on that vote, it was because I don't want to see consolidation of some of those smaller school districts. Nothing better in Southwest Missouri than going to a basketball game on a Friday night and seeing two competing towns fight for bragging rights for the next year. And I don't want to see Missouri lose that.
Casteel, I thought the interesting part, I thought the reason they had 85 votes instead of 55 was it was any public school district. You could go, the money stayed there, didn't get shipped out of state. I thought that might have been the reason that passed as well as it did.
Yeah, it was actually kind of close within the Republican Party, but I think that it will actually, I don't think that rural schools will be as harmed because of the school spirit that you mentioned. I think it was more focused on the urban schools that are not providing the same education as their counterparts.
Marc Ellinger, it was interesting. When the Republicans first took the majority back when you were fighting and clawing, you know, you took everybody from all specters that could be a Republican. It was truly a big tent. It feels like as the tent's grown, now labor folks aren't welcome, and now if you actually were a high school quarterback, you're not welcome. It feels like the tent's narrowing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the nature of ending up in a supermajority. You know, we kind of joke that when you have a supermajority, you really have three political parties. You have the minority, and then you have two splits inside the supermajority. And I think that's what you see play out. But I think open enrollment and I think school choice is really an issue that, particularly with the DESE numbers that just came out this week, is going to get more and more fire and fury across the state. And you know, we talk about it on the radio over the years, and everybody talks about wanting to be able to get their kids to a good school. It's not about funding. It's not about teachers, it's about finding a place for their kid. In the end, that's what's most important, and I think progress on that will ultimately be better for all students, which when we have better education, we have better students, we have better state.
Keri Ingle, I thought the numbers were interesting. Come out and said, 18% of public schools could be provisionally unaccredited. It said almost half of charter schools would be. I would think you wouldn't choose to send your kid to a worse school.
You know, a lot of times that I worry that information isn't as readily accessible to the general public as it should be. I was really proud to see my school districts were in the top percentages. Unfortunately, that isn't the case for a lot of more rural school districts and a lot of charter schools. And I worry that, you know, with current statute, that this is going to unfortunately going to be able to open a lot more charter schools in a lot more rural areas.
You close down schools. When you do open them up, some places still strapped a mask to the front of a kid's face. What did you expect to happen? I mean, I don't know. You expect the economy to go down to a certain extent. That's why there's economic stimulus. I'm not sure that any person could have really thought these numbers wouldn't have went down. Betsy, I was a little impressed. Places that don't have rural broadband, where those kids were completely on an island. Some of those schools held up pretty well.
Oh yeah, I think you said it well. The striking thing to me about those numbers is how charter schools underperformed. And it is interesting to me that there's so many members of the majority party that continually fight to send more money to charter schools and away from their school district down the street that's doing a great job of educating, and the numbers speak for themselves.
David Casteel, let's talk about schools for a second. Another part, athletics. There is a bill, when this session started, you kind of got the sense one of the main touch points was going to be, could a person, and you always want to handle these things delicately, especially if you get hillbilly dialect like mine, but a person born a boy, want to transition to be a girl and play on the girls' team. I think that struck a lot of folks as something that was maybe too much. I feel like that bill was going to pass. Now the trans bills, with some of the things that came out about Washington University, it's been expanded. Where does this end up in the House?
With regard to sports, I would say that there are quite a few girls who would be intimidated to play against a biological boy. And so it's really for the girls and their voice that we try to talk about that issue. It is a controversial and a personal issue, and it's important. I mean, girls have fought for a long time to have have an equal role in this society, and now it's being challenged by biological boys on their sports teams.
Marc Ellinger, it feels like that when session started, I bet we could have sat at Bar Vino and had a beer and said, that's probably what's going to pass, right? It feels like after the story about WashU, that the scope of these bills have certainly grown.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think generally there's a consensus amongst most reasonable people on transgender sports. I mean, that was an easy layup. I mean, it would have been a victory for everybody across the board. After the WashU information came out, it's really thrown the marbles up in the air, and I think people are concerned because some of those allegations are quite disturbing, and if they bear out and they're true, are reprehensible, and people ought to be sanctioned, lose their medical licenses, etc., if they're true. Mm-hmm. That takes some time, and I think we're doing a little bit of rush to judgment on how to solve that problem. But there is still some issue of a problem there. There is parental consent. There is making sure that the best interest of the child is always being taken care of. And there's a documentation issue there. WashU's announced they're doing an investigation. I think we ought to see how that plays out. That doesn't mean we shouldn't get some nice borders around these policies, so at least we have a rational way to go. I don't know if that's possible in this environment. And after what happened in the Senate yesterday, I'm not sure that that's really likely in the immediate future to come out of the Senate side. I think it's tangled up in too many issues, and tensions are rising. And we wondered, when will the peace stop? I don't know if this is it, but maybe this is the breaking point.
We knew it was going to stop this way. Keri Ingle, I do think that there was a likely outcome of this session on the high school athletics was probably going to pass one way or the other. I do think the scope of these bills has certainly broadened, with some consensus, frankly, from maybe not agreeing, but allowing some stuff to come to a vote. Can you, Marc had a great question, can you come up with some framework that makes sense in this environment?
Absolutely. We absolutely can. And I've seen both the language on the Senate side as well as some proposed language on the House side to amend the bills to take into account parental rights in this situation, because I think that that's something that we haven't really talked about, that parents have the right alongside their doctor to make the best choices for their children. Obviously, we want to take in best practices and all of that. And any time that there's allegations to that level, absolutely we need to take them seriously and investigate, but we don't need to rush to judge prior to one person's allegations being solidified.
So, I mean, it feels like maybe Marc's right. It's going to be kind of tough this is a pretty new thing for most people, pretty new thing for science, right? I think WashU ran into some of those issues with their transgender center because there wasn't a lot of established scientific data. Can you make a decision right now on how the state should handle this?
I think I have a little less hope than Representative Ingle that we'll find something that both sides can live with. I'll speak to the sports bill specifically. Marc, I think, used the phrase that this would be a layup, that most common sense people could come to a resolution. But man, I tell you, when you have these 11-year-olds coming to a hearing room in this building where we have so much power over the outcomes of their lives, and they're crying to you about how you're making them feel less than, and you're making them feel scared, and you're making them feel different, I'm really uncomfortable with pushing any legislation that makes that child, who I'm sent here to protect, feel anything less than great. It's hard for a room full of adults to look at those kids and make them feel anything less than the way that they are. And personally, I don't know how you come to compromise on something that's infringing on that child's right to exist and play basketball with their friends.
Well, Marc Ellinger, there's an issue that's talked about by everybody in this building that really nobody knows more about than you, and that's sportsbook. Folks, I just think regular people don't understand why they couldn't bet on the Super Bowl. Why can't they?
Well, they could have gone to Kansas and bet on the Super Bowl, and all the Kansans could have come over here and gotten recreational marijuana this month. So, it worked out. No, look, I mean, we have a long history of struggling with gambling in the state of Missouri and getting it legalized. We had to pass a lottery by the constitutional amendment. We've had to pass riverboat gambling by constitutional amendment. Ironically, sports betting doesn't require any of that. It literally is just a bill that needs to be passed. What's occurred is we have illegal black market machines, slot machines all over the state. Yesterday in a hearing, I heard the number 30,000 across the state. We have right next door in Illinois 45,000 legal video gaming terminals that those operators want to come into the state, and they see sports betting as the the avenue to negotiate and get that done.
Hostage to take, yeah.
And it's a hostage because the vast majority of Missourians would like to have sports betting legalized. The vast majority of Missourians do not want a slot machine in every gas station, a slot machine in every bar. They just want to be able to bet on their local sports team, the Chiefs, the Cardinals. Being a baseball fan, that's the time of season. That hostage mentality goes back to a comment you made earlier about the supermajority breaking apart. It doesn't take that many people in the supermajority to gum everything up. If you didn't have that split with the campaign contributions going so heavily to a small group of senators in particular, you might be able to move something because there seems to be pretty much bipartisan agreement amongst the majority that sportsbook is a good idea.
It does feel like though those slot machines are there because somebody uses them. Does this break? I mean, do you think your colleagues across the aisle can pick a horse and ride it?
I think that the way that the Senate works, that one particular senator can absolutely stop sports betting for the entire state. And it's unfortunate because I do represent, the western part of the state. I represent Kansas City, and I was really honestly surprised by the amount of people who were single issue sports betting on the doors.
Quick prediction, can you bet on sports this coming August?
You can in Kansas.
Yeah, not in Missouri.
What do you think?
I hope so.
Less than 50% chance.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's no way. With a minute left, though, I'm betting they're going to throw us off the air. Who won the week?
Senate Dems. We went to spring break early, and they were able to shut it down.
Who won the week?
I think the police officers who told us that SAPA would cause problems won the week with it being ruled unconstitutional yesterday. Hopefully they can get back to doing their job without us getting in the way.
You're not the kind of say I told you so, but you just kind of did. Who won the week?
The kids in Missouri won the week with the passage of the open enrollment bill out of the House.
Who won the week?
Recreational marijuana, huge BAFO numbers across the state, bigger than anybody expected, third best in the nation.
Yep. I'm going to say Senator John Rizzo. It was such a nice evening this week in Jeff City. The former Governor Nixon came over. Probably 400 or 500 people came to honor a guy who's really left it all on the field. One of the most honorable people that's ever walked through these halls. John Rizzo was our Statesman of the Year, and I say he won the week. And we're going to win the week next. We're taking off. We hope you'll win the week in 2 weeks by coming back here and joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.
I'm a history buff, like I know a lot of you are if you watch the show. We're doing a thing of the history of Missouri. We're going to do it one county at a time. We call it Show Me Missouri. We're going to travel to all 114 counties of the state. We'll have a member of the Farm Bureau, county elected officials, some of your state legislators you see here on the show. We're going to talk about the history, what's happening now in the county, and how the two are interconnected. It's a passion project of mine. If you like history, I hope you'll get involved. Follow us. Go to MissouriTimes.com. You can see it. We'll probably branch it off into its own social media at some point. But you've been so good to us at the Missouri Times, the show, different papers. This is a passion project that I hope you'll enjoy. It's called Show Me Missouri, the history of Missouri, one county at a time. The first county was Polk County. We had a great time. And we hope you'll go to MissouriTimes.com, find a little bit about it. And if you like the history of the state, I hope you'll enjoy it.